Welcome back to the Ultimate Mixdown. In this video, we're going to take a first look approach at the new Pro Tools Intro. Pro Tools Intro came out this year in 2022, and compared to its predecessor Pro Tools First, there's a number of improvements that need to be touched upon. Pro Tools Intro comes with 36 stock plugins, including the Expand 2 virtual instrument. It also comes with 8 audio tracks, 8 MIDI tracks, and 8 instrument tracks. And sometimes that might just be enough for you, especially if you're a beginner or you're just trying out the software. Believe it or not, Pro Tools Intro actually has some extended functionality from its predecessor, Pro Tools First. Pro Tools First only allowed you to save 3 cloud session files. For Pro Tools Intro, you can create and save session files directly on your hard drive with the PTX format. What this means is you can go ahead and create Pro Tools sessions, save them on your local disk, open them up in any Pro Tools version, edit them, do whatever you need to do, and then you still have access to all those files. And the last quote-unquote upgrade of Pro Tools Intro versus Pro Tools First is that you can use any AAX plugins in Pro Tools Intro. So where there were limitations on Pro Tools First where you could only use a core set of plugins, this will let you use any type of plugins that are compatible with the Pro Tools software. Now, while all of these improvements from Pro Tools First are great, the limitations do have their drawbacks. If you need more than 8 audio tracks or 8 instrument tracks, then you might want to consider upgrading to the next tier. Also, Pro Tools is infamously known for requiring people to use the proprietary AAX plugins, so you can't use VST, VST3, or AU plugins in a Pro Tools system. Now that we've covered the basics, let's jump right into the software. So the first thing you want to do is go to avid.com, and then under the Pro Tools tab, there's a compare link. And under the compare link, they're going to talk about their paid higher tier versions. But if you scroll down, you'll see a comparison against Pro Tools Intro as well. Now again, to emphasize, there's limitations on the audio, instrument, and MIDI tracks, so you have significantly higher tracks with the higher tiers as you go. There's also 4 aux and routing tracks. There's 1 master track, and then simultaneous recording inputs is 4. A lot of beginners or a lot of people recording themselves aren't going to need more than this. Another thing to point out, you can use any audio interface with Pro Tools Intro. Like right now, I'm using the Focusrite 2i2. And it's working perfectly fine. And as I mentioned, the intro bundle has 36 plugins. You can click this intro bundle link to see what all those plugins are. There's a lot of stock plugins that are actually relatively good in Pro Tools. They're EQs, delays, there's a reverb. And in addition to that, there's also the Expand 2 virtual instrument. And we'll take a look at that soon. So to download Pro Tools Intro, click the See What's Included link. Click Pro Tools Intro under the included software, and then click Download Now. You'll have to provide an email address, verify the reCAPTCHA, and then click Continue. And then you need an Avid account to download this, so if you have one, enter your password here. If you need to create an account, click Create New Avid Account, and then click Continue. Okay, and then you're going to activate the software and download it. To get going with Pro Tools, you'll need to have iLock. So once you create an iLock account, and then you download the License Manager and open it up, it'll ask you to sign in. You'll also need to download the Avid Link software, and that's a way that you're going to manage all of your Avid software. So your Pro Tools version, any other plugins that you purchase through Avid. All right, guys, so once you enter your iLock ID, then you'll have the download link for your Pro Tools Intro. And if you missed it on the original prompts, then you can come under My Products. You'll see the Pro Tools Intro, and then you can see the download link here. They also give a few additional products that you can work with that are actually pretty sweet. There's the Expand 2 virtual instrument plugin that comes packaged with Pro Tools. And there's also the Avid Loop Masters sample pack. So you get about a gig or so of samples that you can work with. So enough of the boring stuff. Let's get right into the software. Pro Tools might take a little bit of time to load, especially the first time, because it's going to scan all your plugin folders and incorporate those plugins so that you can work with them in the DAW. If you have a few recent projects, they'll display here. Otherwise, you can create a new one. And we can name this UMD for Ultimate Mixdown. I love saving these as local storage sessions and then backing them up on external hard drives. We'll select a WAV file type for now, 48 kilohertz. 24-bit is good. All right, and then you can choose the location where it's going to save your files. So I have it under Users Dave Documents. That's the default, but you can put it anywhere you choose, including an external hard drive, which is a great option so that you have Pro Tools running on your main hard drive, and then you have the files being written to an external hard drive. It just helps with processing. And then click Create when you're ready to go. Okay, and this is what it looks like the first time you open it up. So we have a few different windows going on in their own separate screens as well. So we have the transport controls down on the left, but because we also have them up here in the main window, I'm going to close this out. And then we also have tracks and groups over on the right, but since we have those on the left of the main window as well, I'll also close this out. Right off the bat, you can kind of tell that this looks very similar to some of the higher tier versions of Pro Tools. If you've worked with Pro Tools at all before, you have a lot of the same functionality, and that's great to get going. And one of the first things we want to touch on with the new piece of software is the file menu. So just know that your preferences are under the Pro Tools tab. And then under the file menu, this is where you can create new projects or sessions. This is where you can open sessions, open projects, as well as save as. This is also where you're going to import from or export data into this project. And then also under the file is where you can bounce your mix. Now, editing tools, just like any software, there's cut, copy, and paste. These are also worthwhile to note. So Command or Control X, Command or Control C, and then Command or Control V for paste. The view menu allows you to view different windows. So right now we're in our primary edit window, but there's also the mix window. So if you hold Command or Control and press the equal sign on your keyboard, that brings up the mix window. Then there's the track menu. This is where you create new tracks. You can either come here and click new, or you can hold Command or Control and then Shift and then N. Then there's the options menu. If you want to do things like loop record or quick punch, this will be a place to go for that. Then there's the setup menu. So this is where you set your hardware device. So if you go to setup hardware, that'll be where your device is. And then if you go to setup playback engine, this is where you select your device as the playback engine. And then you can also set the buffer size as well. So if you're recording and you have a laptop with a decent amount of processing power, you'd want to set this to 128 just to get the least amount of latency while you're recording. Latency being the amount of time it takes for the audio to go into your audio interface, convert to digital into your computer, and then come back out through your audio interface into your headphones for you to hear it. There's an Avid link file menu, and this is where you can go to the marketplace and buy additional instruments and sounds and use them with Pro Tools Intro. So you have the 4 different types of modes over here. Then here you have zoom, and there's some presets that you can work with. And then you have your tools here. So you have your trim tool, you have your selection tool, and then you have your grabber tool. Or you could enable all of them by clicking the smart tool, which is the box around them. And now all 3 are selected. It would adjust the way that your mouse works with the clips in the arrange view, depending on where you are hovering over the clip. We have the scrubber tool. So if you click and hold this and go across the waveform, it'll play the audio. And then we have a pencil tool as well. So you can draw in automations and stuff like that. And then here you have your counter. And you can select the different modes for the counter. So you could do bars, beats, minutes, seconds, or samples. You have your start and end, depending on where you select in that audio or MIDI. It'll let you know the start position, the end position, and the length. You can adjust your grid here. All right, here are your transport controls. So many of us are familiar with play, stop, but then there's also the record. So this will start recording if you have any tracks enabled. Here we have a count off section. So it will count off a certain number of bars or beats before initiating recording on wherever you are in the music. You have the tempo, so you can set this to any type of note, 16th notes, quarter notes, eighth notes, as well as you can set the BPM. So this is how many beats in a given minute. So if I set it to 120, there's going to be 120 beats per minute. Under here is the metronome, so you can enable this on or off. Now there's additional menus that you can access using this drop down, so just keep that in mind. On the left, you'll see the tracks listed here as we create tracks and work with them. And then if we group tracks together, you'll see them down here. You can also hide the menus by clicking these arrows with the lines. So this will hide the menu on the left. This will hide the menu on the right. And the bottom one's already hidden, but this would enable that one. So if you want to enable these menus, you just click those buttons again. So here we're in the edit window. And then on the left, you can see we have 3 different rulers. So we're tracking bars and beats, as well as minutes and seconds and samples. If you right click on this area, you can select which you want to see. So if you just want to see bars and beats, for example, you can uncheck the other 2. It's good to just work with the things that you want to use or you need to use. It keeps it a lot less cluttered. So even right now, I'm not going to be using this clips window on the right, so I'm going to hide that. I like to have minutes and seconds, so I'll put that back in. All right, this is tempo mapping, so you can actually adjust the tempo as you go through your project, but we're going to keep it all the same for this one. We have our 4/4 time signature, so you can adjust the time signature as necessary for your musical works. Then you can add markers too. So markers are very important for marking different sections of the song that you're working in. So you can have a marker for intro, first verse, second verse, choruses, and this just helps you fly through the song a lot quicker. Okay, so let's start adding some tracks and seeing what we have to work with. We can go ahead and create new tracks. Again, going to track, new track, or Command Shift N or Control Shift N. And then we can say we want to create 8 mono audio tracks and click create. Okay, we created all 8 of those. If I want to go and create a 9th one though, and I click create, you'll get an error message. The maximum number of tracks already exists for the current Pro Tools configuration. Meaning if you need more audio tracks, you either need to bounce down some of your tracks into a single track, or you need to move up to the next tier. So in addition to 8 audio tracks, we'll do 8 MIDI tracks and create, and then Command Shift N or Control Shift N again, and let's do 8 instrument tracks. So this is the total number of input tracks that you can make on a single session in Pro Tools Intro. So these 24 tracks right here, 8 instrument, 8 MIDI, 8 audio. In addition to that, you can create aux tracks as well. And aux tracks are really good for sending certain effects away from the audio track. So if you wanted to have a reverb that you can use for multiple vocals, for example, you could have 8 different vocals all being sent to the same reverb send. And then you can adjust how much of each vocal you want coming from that reverb. Again, we'll create a new track. We'll enter 4 this time because that's the max on the aux tracks. And then click aux input. And this can be mono or stereo. Again, this depends on the source that you're feeding into it, as well as the effects that you're putting on it. And then you click create. Okay? And here's our 4 aux tracks. Another track that you can add is one master fader track. And this is a great place to put on any overall mixing or mastering plugins. If you want to compress the entire song just a little bit to kind of glue all of the pieces together, or you want to EQ out some low end that is most likely inaudible anyway across the spectrum of all of your instruments. Or if you want to put on a mastering plugin so that you can increase the volume but also keep a ceiling so that it doesn't go beyond that ceiling and clip. To create the master track, you do the same thing we did for all the other tracks. Track new, 1, and then master fader, click create. So now we have all of these tracks here to work with. You don't need to create them all up front. This is just for example purposes. So taking a look at the first track, you have your track record enable. So this arms the track for recording. You have the import monitoring. So this allows you to hear what's coming from the audio source as you're recording or as you're playing back. You have the solo. So this solo is just this track and all other tracks will be muted. You have the mute, which will mute this track, and then any unmuted tracks that are in the project will be the only ones audible. And then here, you're selecting the type of data that you want to see in the display. So primarily, you're going to start out with waveform for audio. Right now, we're just seeing the audio track and its recording options. But if we click on this window right here, we can also see our inserts A through E, as well as sends. And then you can also do F through J if you have more than 5 inserts or 5 sends. Inserts are plugins or effects that you're going to place onto the track that get applied after the audio source comes in. So your audio source will come to the track and then it'll go through the different plugins that you'll have on the inserts. So you might have an EQ, you might have a compressor or multiple, and it'll go through the chain starting from the top and going down the bottom. And then it goes out through the sends. So if you have, let's say, a reverb on an aux track, you can send your audio source, say audio 1, to that aux track. Let's say that the aux track with our reverb is set to bus 3 or 4. So we would send this audio source to the reverb by selecting bus 3, 4 in the sends. And then another menu item that you're going to want to have is I/O. So that's your input and output. You need to select an import source if you're recording some type of material, if it's audio or MIDI. If you have a MIDI device that you're triggering virtual instruments from, you'll select the import source as that MIDI type. If you're working with audio and you're recording through an audio interface, then you can select one of the inputs on the audio interface. So earlier I had set my playback engine and my audio device as the Focusrite Scarlett 2i2. I have 2 inputs on that. I can either send a line instrument, so that's like an electric guitar with a 1/4-inch line input, or I can set a microphone on one of the inputs using an XLR cable. In this case, I'll put my electric guitar into input 1. And then output we can leave alone because right now this is just sending the output through the master channels. So I hear it through output 1 and 2. Basically that means it's coming out of your left and right speaker or it's coming out of your headphones as you're listening back. There's also volume and pan controls. So you can increase or decrease the volume of the track by clicking and dragging up or down. And then Alt or Option click brings it back to 0 or the default. Pan you can click and drag left or right. And again, Alt or Option click brings it back to 0. So now let's also go to the mix window and see what these tracks look like in the mix window. So again, Command or Control equals. And here we have all our tracks in the mix window as well. You have a lot of the same functionality here that we showed in the edit window, but you're not going to see the waveforms of the audio or the MIDI notes of the MIDI. That's the kind of stuff that you'll manipulate in the edit window. So you'll edit your audio or you'll edit your MIDI notes. You'll move things around. You'll trim up certain areas and get it sitting just the way you want. And then if you want to go in and mix, this is a little easier to see as a whole because you're just focusing on the mixing. So you have your inserts and then your sends. You can also select your inputs and outputs here, your pan knob here, and your volume slider here. And then again, we also have track input monitoring, track record enable, solo, and mute buttons here as well. And then you can just go down the line and look at all of your tracks by scrolling left or right. A quick way to scroll left and right is to hold the shift key and go up or down on your mouse wheel. All right, so let's see what it looks like when we record some audio. So I'm going to record arm this first audio track, and again, it's tied to my guitar on input 1. And when I play the guitar now, you'll see a little meter showing the volume level of that guitar. So when you're recording, you want to make sure that the level stays within the green, maybe the lower parts of the yellow. For an actual value, I like to work with -12 to -18 dB, so I have plenty of headroom where I can add plugins and effects, and I'm not going to get any nasty clipping or distortion because I recorded that signal too hot. If we go over to the mix window, so this is where I would gain stage my input, and you want to gain stage at a part in the song that's where you're going to play the loudest. If I play loud or strum loudly on my guitar like I would in a certain part of the song, you can see that we're getting to right about -18 dB. If you want to bring up your volume or reduce your volume, you need to do it on the audio device itself. So clicking this slider and moving it up and down, that's only going to change the volume that you hear out of your headphones, but it's not going to adjust the audio signal coming into Pro Tools. And once you've done that, you're ready to record. So we'll go back to the edit or arrange window. And now that we're record armed, you can click record to record enable, and then press the space bar, and then that will kick off the recording. And then you can play through your audio source. And when you're done recording, just press the spacebar to stop the recording. And then if you want to adjust the zoom, you can hold the Alt or Option key and scroll on your mouse wheel. And then if you have other parts to record, you can disable the first track and then enable the next track, making sure you select the correct input on your device. So that's the audio. And with Pro Tools, they have instrument tracks where instead of setting up a MIDI track and routing it to an audio track just to use the virtual instruments, you can use an instrument track that kind of takes care of that behind the scenes. So you can record arm that so that when you click record enable and press the spacebar, you'll be able to record the instrument. To select an instrument, you click on the inserts and then you go to your instrument plugins. So you do plugin, instrument, and then Pro Tools Intro comes with the expand too. So we'll select that virtual instrument. Okay, when it opens up, you can audition the different sounds of the instrument. So you can select here, you can click on any one of these sounds, and then you can press buttons on your keyboard controller or on your MIDI controller, or you could even draw in the MIDI notes using the mouse, and the instrument will pick up those MIDI notes and play them back for you. Now you want to make sure that if you're going to use a keyboard controller or a MIDI controller that you already have those turned on if they need to be turned on and plugged in. But if you're using a USB device, make sure that you have the USB cable plugged into the instrument as well as into your machine before you even open Pro Tools so that it can auto detect that. Otherwise, you'll need to do some mappings so that Pro Tools understands what controller is triggering these sounds. And once you record enabled, you can record enable up here. And again, you can press spacebar on the keyboard and that'll start off the recording. So let's go ahead and record. Okay, once you're done recording, press the spacebar, and then you'll see that there's a MIDI file here, and these are the MIDI notes that are triggering your virtual instrument. So while you were recording, it was tracking down those notes that you were playing, and it created this mapping in MIDI format. And then when you press playback, it's going to go through this mapping and it's going to trigger the associated notes from the virtual instrument that you selected on your inserts. So let's remove some of these tracks here. So to select multiple tracks, you can click one, hold the shift key, and then click another one. And if you do it in sequence, you can select all of these that we don't want here. And we'll just select delete. All right, and here we have our audio track and our instrument track. We don't need these instrument tracks either. And we're not working with the aux tracks today, so we'll do the same thing here. Now, once you're all recorded, you can go over to the mix window. You can add on some plugins. So in your audio, you can add on some EQs for any desired frequency cuts or boosts, as well as compression. So if you have a dynamic performance and you want to tame that dynamic performance, so you don't want the louder parts to be too loud or the quieter parts to be too quiet, the compressor will really help with that. And then once you have it all mixed and ready to go, you can go to File, Bounce Mix, And then this will export your project. So you can enter the file name if it's different from your project name. Select the file type. A good shareable file type is MP3. Mix source, so you can keep it as output 1, 2. Keep it as interleaved file format. So this is good for your stereo format that you're going to send out to MP3. Make sure the sample rate is set as the sample rate that you set for the project. You can set the location of the bounce. So right now, this is going to go under your session folder. So my UMD project folder under the bounce files subfolder. And then the last thing you would do is click bounce. And then that brings you to this screen, and you can add in some metadata for your MP3 file. The title is already pre-populated for you, but you could add artist, album, comments. You could select the genre, say what track it is on the album or EP, the year that you created it, and click OK. And once it's done bouncing and finalizing, then you have that MP3 on your system so that you can access, you can play it back, you can share it with others, social media, and so forth. So overall, I hope this was a good introduction for you to Pro Tools Intro. This is a great way to immerse yourself into the software and get your musical projects recorded and out there. Again, there's some limitations. There's the 8 audio tracks, 8 MIDI tracks, 8 instrument tracks, 4 aux tracks. So there's a lot of flexibility even though the track number is limited. If you found this video useful, please click the like button. And if you want to be notified of other videos from the Ultimate Mixdown in the future, click the subscribe button and the notification bell. And I hope to see you in the next video.